Ladies and gentlemen, this is Q News. It's 6 minutes past 4 p.m. our local time. I'm Henny Saif, and this is our special coverage. Israeli demolitions and strikes were reported in Gaza City and Qnews, with Palestinian sources citing civilian damage and new displacement. Israel says operations aim to disarm Hamas and maintain security with the U.S. nation. Exchanges continue under the truce, and Lebanon, a deadly raid and strikes near Qura and heightened tensions as Beirut demands enforcement of ceasefire terms while Israel cites Hezbollah targets.
And then, of course, we have the host tonight, and I just thank you very much. It was a reason we chose Egypt, because you were very helpful, and everybody wanted to have this, but we really thought it was appropriate, and you are a great leader. And he's a fantastic man and a fantastic general, by the way, but he's a great president, and I want to thank Egypt and all of your representatives for treating us all so well. Thank you very much.
Israeli occupation forces continued demolitions across the Gaza Strip amid ongoing bombardment in Gaza City and Qnews, with Palestinian media reporting the destruction of the electricity company building and a home in Abbasen as artillery fire persisted east of Qnews. Palestinian media said troops demolished the electricity company building and a residential house in the eastern town of Abbasen, while artillery shelling intensified along the eastern Qnews perimeter. Residents described fresh displacement as crews struggled to reach damaged blocks under intermittent fire. Humanitarian groups warned that continued infrastructure losses, particularly power facilities, will deepen shortages of water, sanitation, and medical services, and urged protection of civilian sites and safe corridors for relief. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Gaza will remain under Israeli control to ensure it poses no threat, adding after meetings with senior U.S. officials at the Civil Military Coordination Center that Israel will disarm Hamas and preserve freedom of action. In a post on X, Netanyahu said governance and security in Gaza will stay under Israel's authority, framing the objective as preventing future threats while maintaining Israel's operational latitude. He noted discussions with senior U.S. officials at the Civil Military Coordination Center on force posture and coordination. The Prime Minister reaffirmed plans to disarm Hamas and remove weapons in the Strip, linking these steps to broader security guarantees. The remarks come as ceasefire diplomacy and security arrangements remain under review, with questions, timelines, civilian administration, and international roles still to be defined. President Donald Trump said the U.S. brokered Gaza ceasefire remains intact despite overnight Israeli strikes, defending Israel's right to respond and urging all sides to stick to his plan as Washington pushes a binding political roadmap. Speaking on his Asia tour, President Trump reaffirmed that the ceasefire framework stands and warned Hamas of an inevitable end if it defies the plan. He said the U.S. is working with regional and international partners on a binding political solution that guarantees Israel's security, expands humanitarian access, and eases Gaza's suffering. The White House is prioritizing verification measures, protected aid corridors, and follow-on arrangements to stabilize the situation. Trump added that the group is a small part of a larger Middle East deal, urging all parties to uphold commitments while diplomats coordinate next steps on implementation and monitoring.
The interviews are tough enough without your life being threatened. You guys okay? That camera guy's very steady. We're going to look real bad today on television, I'll tell you. I think that, it's...
Palestinian media say preparations are underway in Gaza to hand over the bodies of 2 Israelis this afternoon as exchanges of remains continue under the U.S. brokered truce signed on October 10th of 2025. Local reports indicate coordination teams in Gaza are preparing a transfer of 2 Israeli remains later today, part of the ongoing body exchanges under the October 10th truce. Since the deal took effect, Israel has handed over hundreds of Palestinian detainees' bodies, while Hamas has returned a limited number of Israeli remains. Health and civil defense units say identification and handover procedures are being arranged with mediators and forensic teams. Officials caution timelines can shift based on access and verification steps. The exchanges are viewed as a confidence measure tied to broader ceasefire compliance, humanitarian access, and efforts to account for those still missing. Axios reports Washington is preparing a plan to deploy an international force in Gaza within weeks, with a proposal that includes training a new Palestinian police force to stabilize the Strip under the ceasefire framework. According to Axios website, U.S. officials are drafting an international deployment concept for Gaza designed to support ceasefire enforcement, protect aid corridors, and back phased reconstruction. The plan, described as weeks away, would pair a multinational presence with vetting and training for a new Palestinian police force, alongside clear command and control and rules of engagement. Discussions reportedly cover contributor nations, funding, and coordination with mediators to avoid overlaps with Israeli operations. Timelines and mandate details are still fluid, and any deployment would hinge on political sign-off, security guarantees, and mechanisms to prevent spoilers. Turkey says its relief team sent to help recover Israeli and Palestinian bodies under Gaza's rubble is still awaiting Israeli clearance to cross from Egypt's Rafah into the Strip, calling the delay a breach of the ceasefire terms. A Turkish defense ministry source said the AFAD mission remains at the border pending an Israeli green light to enter Gaza for search and recovery operations. Ankara argues the hold-up violates the ceasefire's humanitarian provisions and risks slowing identification and transfers of remains. The team is prepared to move with specialized equipment once permission is issued, according to the source. Coordination continues with Egyptian authorities and mediators, while Turkey has pressed Israel to honor access commitments and facilitate urgent recovery work tied to ongoing exchanges and family notifications. And for a better understanding, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohammed Osman, the International Relations Specialist. Dr. Osman, welcome to Q News. What does Israel's stated plan to keep control of Gaza mean for the ceasefire's terms, the timeline, and the role of the mediators?
Thank you for having me, Hani. Indeed, if Israel plans to maintain a permanent presence in the majority of Gaza, as is the case right now, this, of course, will be to the detriment of the ceasefire agreement and the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement and the Trump peace plan as a whole. In its own core, even as a concept, will be devoid of any meaning and eventually will be null and void. So what the Israelis are pushing for, basically, is a recipe for the collapse of this agreement. However, on the other hand, the Americans seem to be interacting very positively with the developments on the ground with regards to the implementation of the Trump Sheikh agreement. It seems that they are committed to maintaining the calm and the ceasefire and preventing the situation from descending back into open warfare, because now President Trump's credibility is staked, of course, in foreign policy terms, is staked on the Gaza ceasefire, basically, and what he calls a peace agreement or a Middle East peace plan, as he likes to exaggeratedly, of course, this bit. So it seems that the Americans will rein in the Israelis. We have seen in the day before yesterday the episode of violence and unwarranted rampaging across the Gaza Strip that was executed by the Israelis, killing over 100 Palestinians in retaliation for a shooting of a single soldier. And of course, most of those 100 were civilians. The Israelis were also planning to expand their ground control over Gaza, meaning that they deploy to areas beyond the yellow line, areas they have already evacuated. The Americans apparently pressured them and reined them in, forced them to back down, and it seems that the Israelis are once again committed to the cessation of hostilities. However, if this American pressure is not sustained, or if it flinches for 1 second, unfortunately, this agreement could be in very dire straits.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of talk about an international force. Now, if an international force is deployed, what mandate or command structure and rules of engagement would protect civilians and aid routes while providing an open-ended occupation?
Egypt has very wisely pushed for placing this supposed international stabilization force within a certain legal context, meaning that Egypt has placed a precondition for the deployment of its own troops as part of this stabilization force, and even for its deployment and its support for that deployment in general, that the United Nations should authorize this international stabilization force through a resolution that creates a certain mandate for this international force. And basically, whether they will be peacekeepers or peace enforcers, what the exact competencies and tasks will be exactly, this should be determined by UN resolution, and also the duration of the deployment, and even the regulations of combat that they should engage in rules of combat. So as you can see, Hani, the idea of the deployment is very vague, but of course it is a good idea. It is essential to have international force round in order to place further guarantees for the application of the this agreement, and to prevent chaos from prevailing in the Gaza Strip, and secure the livelihood of the people of Gaza, and ensure the enforcement of the ceasefire, and ensure the delivery of aid. However, at the same time, this needs to be under UN cover, and there needs to be guarantees that these forces will not be targeted by the Israelis. We have just seen the other day the Israelis were harassing UNIFIL forces in southern Lebanon. They targeted them on multiple occasions over the past decades, actually, not only past weeks and days. So we should not see a repetition of such trend of events in Gaza. So it's very important to have a UN mandate for this force and actual guarantees that their jurisdiction will be respected and upheld by the Israeli side.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Mohammed Osman from Cairo, the International Relations Specialist, thank you very much, sir, for being with us here on Q News. And moving on to the latest developments taking place in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
الوضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanon state media says Israeli forces raided the southern town of Bleida overnight, storming the municipal building where an employee was sleeping and killing him, as Israel said its troops were dismantling Hezbollah infrastructure without providing evidence. The Lebanese National News Agency reported Israeli units, backed by drones and light armored vehicles, entered Bleida and breached the municipal headquarters, where a municipal staffer was found dead after the operation. Local officials said the raid sparked alarm amid a wider uptick in Israeli actions across southern Lebanon. The Israeli Defense Forces said the incursion targeted Hezbollah infrastructure, but did not present proof the building was used by the group. It adds to cross-border tensions, with residents reporting drone activity and intermittent fire in nearby areas. There was no immediate independent verification of the competing claims. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun called on Army Commander Rudolf Heikel for the army to confront any Israeli incursions in southern Lebanon. Aoun stressed that this aggression, which falls within a series of Israeli hostile practices, came after a meeting of the committee monitoring the cessation of hostilities agreement. He added that the committee should not merely record incidents, but work to put an end to them by pressuring Israel to adhere to the provisions of last November's agreement and to stop its violations of Lebanese sovereignty. And for further analysis, we're joined by Mr. Abdullah Naima, the writer, political researcher from Beirut. Sir, welcome to Q News. What does the Bleda raid signal about Israel-Hezbollah rules of engagement? And how close are both sides into slipping into a wider fight?
Good evening to you and everyone who's watching at Q News. We know that the Israeli shelling on southern Lebanon has been happening every day, and we know that Israel are always attacking Lebanon to pressure the Lebanese government to disarm Hezbollah and to have direct negotiations with them. And we know that a few days ago, the with the Egyptian delegation has visited Beirut to try to bring the point of views together, because we know what happened in Gaza and Egypt's involvement with the Gaza negotiations and the agreement that they had, and the Egyptian Republic of Egypt now is the Great Republic of Egypt, because they were able to impose the Gaza agreement with Egyptian provisions to keep the rights of the Palestinians, and this is what convinced U.S. President Donald Trump, and there was some kind of understanding between U.S. President Donald Trump and Egyptian President al-Sisi, and I think that the head of intelligence visit to Beirut is them doing the same thing to have negotiations between Lebanon and Israel, and it will be brokered by the U.S. and Egypt, and this is what President Aoun has asked from the Egyptian president in his visit, and said that he wants Lebanon to have what Gaza had, to have the same agreement that was between Hamas and Israel. And so I think that we're heading towards negotiations between Lebanon and Israel, brokered by Egypt, and I think that having a great war in Lebanon is not likely. Maybe, yeah, that we will have some Israeli strikes in the upcoming days until we reach the negotiations, because Israel is always pressuring Lebanon. But now in Lebanon, for the first time ever, President Aoun has asked the Lebanese army to defend their land and to attack Israel and face the Israeli challenges, and this is the first time of this happening. And so Israel won't keep up with the shelling and the strikes in the south, and Hezbollah welcomed President Aoun's decision for the Lebanese army to defend Lebanon, and the things will change from here. And I think that there will be some kind of agreement, and that this was a decision from the government, and it was some kind of an exit for Hezbollah which and it's a message that says that the Lebanese army can defend their land, and that Hezbollah is ready to disarm. Especially because Hezbollah agreed with the Egyptians to disarm with Arab guarantees. And I think that Egypt will be the one to give hope for negotiations between Lebanon and Israel, and the agreement will be brokered by the US with a military delegation from Lebanon and from Israel, with Egypt being with the committee. And I think that the upcoming days will be better, and the quick decisions that they had,
Yes.
the diplomatic stance. We saw that the Arab president or of Arab League has eliminated any broad war on Lebanon, and at the same time they postponed the visit, and I think that this is positive. And then the foreign minister deputy has also postponed his visit, and I think that the head of intelligence visit had positive impacts and outcomes.
Yes.
And we know that if someone like Hassan Rashad comes to Lebanon to interfere in this way, this means that
You're
things
absolutely
are
right, sir. You're absolutely right. The situation there is developing. I'll have to put a pin on that, and we'll be following the latest developments taking place in Lebanon with you, ladies and gentlemen. That was Mr. Abdullah Naama, the writer, political researcher. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us here on Q News. Tonight, the map tightens. Demolitions and strikes in Gaza deepen civilian peril, and mediators press for verifiable restraint. On the northern front, Blaida and Naqoura signal that a local flashpoint can widen without warning. The hours ahead will test the ceasefire spine, crossings, corridors, and the credibility of commitments on both sides. Stay tuned for more updates here on Q News. I'm Henia Saif. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Q News EGY. Thank you for joining us.